Hello and welcome to a new post-game show. This time, we're going to decipher or decrypt, whatever you want to say, the Xbox Games Showcase that took place on Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. It's just going to be me today. Curtis was not able to join, but might have some Last of Us 2 stuff in the future, so be excited for that. This is the Xbox Games Showcase. We've seen a little bit, we saw third party from Xbox, then we saw first and third party from Sony. Now we are finally seeing first party Xbox Game Studios plus some others games. And if you've kind of been reading around the internet, the reception has been a little lukewarm. And I honestly am kind of there also. I was kind of just kind of give some overall thoughts, then we'll go by game. I do like what they showed, though a lot of the stuff I do feel like we already knew about, or two, it even just feels like it's coming to other platforms. And I don't mean the other platforms as PC, I mean like other platforms as like PS4. So I felt like that was kind of, it lessened the impact. And console launch exclusive was a thing that happened later on in this showcase, that we got a little bit of that at the PS4 one, or excuse me, PS5 with Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. But I feel like here, these games just weren't as, I guess, eye popping as the PlayStation ones. But yeah, getting right into I guess like the first game. It's the game it seems like everybody's talking about. It's Halo Infinite. We got the gameplay demo, maybe around 8 minutes, just a little bit shorter than that. Holiday 2020. They talk multiplayers coming in the coming months. They do highlight it's on Xbox Series X, Xbox One, which we knew about, which might be an issue with maybe some issues with the game. Not necessarily like how the game is, but and then PC. So let's just start off with that gameplay demo. I want to say I started watching the little cinematic they have with the guy and Master Chief, and I already wasn't loving it, though I do like the art style. It does seem a little bit more simplistic than some of the other games. But then you actually get into the gameplay, and I didn't hate it at first. I still don't. But I thought a lot of it didn't look particularly great because it was more of a like art style choice. It was more of like a simplistic kind of thing. One thing I noticed, even I guess from something like Halo 4 and Halo 5, is that I feel like Infinite had a lot more color than those games. So I thought that was like part of the art decision. But you really start getting up close and you really start seeing some muddy textures. That was probably what everybody's biggest problem with it was. I was really concerned about with the pop-in, specifically like this is like an SDS, like it's all we're hearing about this generation is SSD, all of these super fast loading and stuff like that, and even just stuff that Master Chief is just like walking and there's like grass popping in and out. There's the part where I really first noticed it when he was going up the elevator, and you can just see like snow on the mountains just popping in. And I don't really know how other way to say it, though. It just looked rough. I'm not going to say it looked bad. And we've heard a little bit more coming out over the last few days that it was early, or it's an early build. I don't remember if they said how early of a build it was, but it certainly wasn't probably wasn't the step that Microsoft wanted to take. I would say in this, and I think that's really tough because I personally have a hard time believing that Phil Spencer and whoever else, Aaron Greenberg, whatever people you want to talk about, Matt Booty, were saying that this looks phenomenal and we gotta like this is gonna be our tentpole. I feel like they may have just kind of had to and just let the chips fall where they may, I guess. Just kind of watching a part in the background. I want to say maybe Digital Foundry did a video on it. I can't remember whose video I saw, but just talking about like, yeah, the shield on the Elite when Master Chief is shooting him. It just like they showed a screenshot of Halo Reach and then Halo Infinite. And yeah, I don't really know if it is just an artistic style or not. It's just, it didn't look very good. It looked very flat. It looked like, I don't want to say it's rushed, which is hard to say when, the last Halo game, mainline game, was 2015. I mean, it's been going to be 5 years this fall. But even just stuff like going close to the Bruce and just seeing the kind of plastic looking texture. Now, there's a part where Master Chief is just walking by some debris right before the elevator. And it just seems like the debris is kind of like floating in the air, which, I mean, that happens in games. I mean, like, you can say even The Last of Us Part 2 or, whatever great games you want to talk about. Like, there's little glitches and stuff like that. But specifically when you make something big for next gen, you feel like you do your best to try and get rid of some of those little quirks. I feel like that doesn't show well in a video presentation, where I think is when you're playing a game, it's like, okay, I understand, like, there's so much going on. Whereas here, it just seemed, there's just didn't seem like there was anything special about this demo. I would probably say some of the things I really liked about it were the weapons. They have that new kind of like heavy assault rifle thing. Like, just the sound of that I thought was really good, were kind of some of the sounds of the other weapons I didn't really care for. But I think that would be like a really cool weapon, like not necessarily a power weapon, but a weapon that, if you're playing multiplayer, you want to try and get that weapon in the center of the map, kind of thing. Another big thing we had rumors about, but it is, I guess, confirmed. We have the grapple shot, which is, the grappling hook kind of thing. And it is more of like a, kind of, it's this name put together, but it is more of like a hook shot, it seems like, from like Zelda or something like that. So I think that was a good showing of the grapple thing. I just feel like it is on a cooldown. You can only use it once every once in a while, which is its, minor gaminess, I guess, which I'm always just kind of like, I'm not a cooldown person. I'm not like an MMO person, but it's just when you're seeing something that looks so familiar, when you see something like that, like, oh, there's a cooldown, oh, there's this particular thing, like, oh, like a little quirk in a game that you would just kind of hope would be alleviated in the next gen, and it just hasn't really. But really the big part that I felt the most uncomfortable in this whole thing was with the Brute, who I guess is part of the Banished, which is from Halo Wars 2. The part that really, I was just sitting there like thinking about it, when he's just sitting there talking, doing his like little monologue. I'm just thinking, like, this doesn't look great, right? Like, I'm not alone. Like, this doesn't look great, right? And I still don't even know where to stand. Like, I think there's part of it that, like, yeah, it doesn't look great, and I think maybe it's just different because it's not like a human face and whatnot, but it's really hard coming off of, some of the, and trying not to sound fanboyish, I suppose, but, some of the PlayStation games that I've recently played or even seen at the PS5 event. It's watching that and then watching this, it really is not very impressive, I suppose. I'm still excited for Halo Infinite. I think there's a lot to be shown still, specifically with multiplayer, and even if there's maybe like a third pillar kind of co-op thing, like, there's always that rumor of Battle Royale, which I still don't really believe will happen. But I just, man, I wanted to be more blown away by Halo, and I was just kind of left feeling like, yeah, I mean, that's a Halo game, I guess. It is more open for sure. It really brought back thoughts, and I think that's what they were going for, is like the second mission, I guess it is, in Combat Evolved, where you're stepping out on that Halo ring for the first time. You're just kind of seeing the world around you. And that level is kind of open. Like, I do believe, like, towards the end of that mission, you have like 3 installations you have to go and destroy. And I do feel like that is kind of where the inspiration where they took with this game. Again, we do also mention that it is coming to Xbox One, which maybe is why this game looks the way it does. I will say, like, thinking about it more, like, yeah, I would say Halo 5 probably does look better on something like Xbox One X than this. But again, they do have to kind of scale this for the original Xbox One. And I don't know if they're trying to target lower end PCs so more people can play. I have no idea that this game's going to be on launch on PC day one. But I'm not really sure. It just a lot of flatness, and I think that's really the word to describe with this. Even just like the screenshots that they put out, like official screenshots, 4K images, whatever, on their website just didn't look very good, and it's just hard to be like, yeah, we're gonna press the go button on this game when it kind of looks like that, I suppose. But I mean, I would love for more people. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on Halo specifically. If you liked it, if you are still excited for it, I'm still excited for it. But I really think there was just so much more, or better, that I guess this game could have been portrayed than the way it was. So next up, we have a game that I called probably within the first 15 seconds of it starting. State of Decay 3. Didn't really see much. We may have a new protagonist, though I think those games usually I think you kind of create your own character, maybe? I'm not really sure. Please correct me down below. But they have a crossbow. I want to say maybe the only thing I could say would be like zombie animals, which I don't know if that was in the previous ones. You have like a zombie deer at the end. Other than that, maybe screaming at animals to make them run away. I'm not really sure. But and I might get into that a little bit later, but it's just kind of on my mind, so I'll touch upon it now. This game's probably going to, more than likely, is from Undead Labs, who's one of the studios that Microsoft acquired. And I don't really feel like there's all that many people asking for a new State of Decay. I mean, I think the first game sold really well on 360. It was like an arcade title. I remember them talking about the game sold really well. State of Decay 2 was just kind of like whatever it seemed like. I know they were pumping out expansions for it. I'm not really in the Xbox ecosystem, so I don't really 100% know. But it just didn't seem like there was all that much to the State of Decay franchise. And it's a little... I personally would love something like Undead Labs to do something different than State of Decay. But I feel like with that name, Undead Labs, it just kind of feels like they're locked in. So with another State of Decay game coming, it really felt like a nothing announcement to me. Like, I'm not excited, but I'm not like upset. It's just like, oh, there's another game, pretty much. But again, nothing really shown. Probably coming months, I would assume 2021, maybe later kind of game. But then Phil Spencer then came out, I almost said on stage, but I guess on video, wearing a snazzy blue Halo Infinite shirt. Could have teased something right there. We have the announcement of the new Forza Motorsport, which I think it's really good that they're just calling it Forza Motorsport. I'm assuming that's just what they're going to call it. Because I think they're up to like 7 or 8 or something like that. It's like they're really up there on their numbered entries. So I kind of like them just, hey, this is just going to be Forza Motorsport. Maybe they're going to build off of it in the future. I'm not really sure. But one thing I was really surprised at is looking at the Xbox Wire blog post after the showcase was that they said this game is currently in early development. And again, I don't really want to say that's like disheartening, but it's been certainly a while since the last mainline Forza Motorsport game, because I don't believe there was one last year, and I want to say the one before that was Horizon, or Horizon 2, I guess. I don't believe Horizon 2 was last year, but man, time flies so fast. But this is where they really start. This is where they really start doing some weird stuff, because they only show Xbox Series X and PC. And Microsoft had said that, hey, we're going to kind of ease you into this next generation, that games are going to be available on Xbox One, PC, and Xbox, are going to be a Xbox One and Xbox Series X. So really saying like you don't have to have Xbox One immediately, or excuse, Xbox Series X immediately. And we see that with Halo Infinite. We see later on like stuff like Psychonauts 2, that is like Crossfire, stuff like that. Like that's gonna be on Xbox One. But there's also plenty of stuff that they said only, I guess, Xbox Series X and PC, which I don't know if they backtracked on. I don't know if they, I don't want to just say they come out and lied about it. But it is kind of weird that they put those things at the end of the trailer saying like didn't say only, but just only listing it as Xbox Series X and PC. Next up, we have the game from Rare, which is Everwild. We heard about this last year. I think it was an XO19 announcement along with the next game. I thought it was a beautiful trailer. The only thing we know is like the blog post list is play as an Eternal. And this does list Xbox Series X and PC, which is weird, as I want to say they probably marketed this as an Xbox One game at XO19. So it doesn't really, I don't think even Rare probably even knows, because they only say that like they're still playing around with gameplay ideas. So it really feels like only like a little bit of this game is built, and it's weird to say of a game that feels like that early still, that got shown off last year. And I'll probably just combine these two, but also going to go into tell me why. This game from Don't Nod. This is, I'm going to basically just say it looks like a good like a better looking Life is Strange kind of game. It looks very Life is Strange, but you know, it actually kind of looks like pretty good character design, detail, doesn't light the world on fire, which, you know, clearly doesn't show like it's, oh, look at the power of the Xbox Series X. But I'll play that on Xbox One or PC or whatnot. This is a game I'd really like to play. I have a release date of Chapter 1 coming August 27th, so that's obviously before Xbox Series X launches. But what I wanted to combine this and Everwild together was, I feel like part of the problem of this this event was we knew a good amount of these things. I also probably want to say the same thing on a game coming up called Grounded, where we already knew these games were coming. And I feel like this would have been better if Everwild was a brand new announcement. We got a trailer of it last year that really showed us not much. And you could probably say the same thing about this trailer that we also heard about it that wasn't very much. So why have that almost full year of not really showing anything? Whereas Tell Me Why announced at the same event, pretty sure. And I want to say we've probably gotten some previews here and there, but I think that would have been cooler just to have been like, hey, guess what? Here's this brand new Don't Nod adventure. It's, you know, not Life is Strange. It's not Twin Mirror. And it's out, you know, August 27th. But we already kind of knew these games existed. So it was like, oh, right, there's an update on this game. I don't know. That's just my kind of personal opinion. I think these announcements right here would have had more weight to them if we had not heard of these games before. Next up, we have Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which this also felt like a nothing announcement. Like, this felt like a blog post announcement. Basically just confirming that an Xbox Series X version is coming later this year. Had a guy from Moon Studios on there talking about the 120 frames per second compared to, I guess, the 60 frames that it's running at on Xbox One. And okay, I mean, the blog posts, they mentioned at the very end, like games like Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5, Gears Tactics, Sea of Thieves, those games are going to be optimized on Xbox Series X, but Ori was really the only one they went into detail on. If they were going to show Ori, I would at least like to have had like little quick bits of like how Gears 5 going to look even better. And I think maybe they've talked about that, but I want to see, instead of just seeing the side-by-side with Ori, I'd rather see the side-by-side of something like Forza, which maybe it's hard to do. But they didn't touch too much on Ori. That was kind of there and gone pretty quickly. Next up, this is the game that I almost call the obligatory Obsidian is a first-party studio now, and even though this game is third-party, since they're a first-party studio now, we have to talk about it. And I feel like this the same way I feel about Psychonauts 2 a little bit. But the Outer Worlds, we got the announcement of the Peril on Gorgon DLC coming September 9th to Xbox Series X, PC, Xbox One. One word I have not touched upon yet in this entire event that was really big is the word Game Pass. And they say everything you've seen today is on Game Pass. Like, well, I guess they had a little like blurb at the bottom that was like, oh, you have to pay for the Peril on Gorgon DLC. So Outer Worlds itself is still going to be on Game Pass, but I guess if you want the DLC, you'll have to pay separate for it, which, I mean, it's perfectly understandable. But I was just thought that was like, well, there's one game that didn't. I have really nothing to say about this. This is kind of the beginning of the Obsidian trifecta, per se. Yeah, I don't really have anything much else to say about it. The only really other thing I have to say about it is that it's coming to PS4 and probably Switch, that kind of looking terrible port that they have. This is going to be multi-platform. I don't know if it's going to be first DLC on Xbox or whatnot, but that's coming to other platforms too. Next up, the second Obsidian game is Grounded. I don't have much to say about this. We've seen this before. I mean, there's a Battletoads Easter egg. They make like a cyberpunk joke, which I thought was kind of funny. Meaning just like, I feel like this tone was like really kind of starting to feel drab a little bit of the presentation. So like having just a little bit of humor in there helped. It's coming out July 28th to game preview. I believe they also listed this as Xbox One, Series X, PC. I'm not really a survival game person. Listen to my Metal Gear Survive thing from 2 years ago, whenever that was. Just not really that big on survival stuff, and you throw multiplayer into survival, and I just really don't care. But probably one of the bigger announcements in the entire show was the big new Obsidian RPG. And it's a first-person RPG set in the world of Eora, which I had no idea what that meant, but then hearing about it later, it sounds like that is the world of Pillars of Eternity. And it looked like where the Outer Worlds was a very interesting parallel to Fallout, Avowed, the new game is very similar to something like Elder Scrolls or even specifically Skyrim. We kind of see some like hand gesture stuff. Or like spells. We have a sword. It just seems like that's where they're going with this. And I don't know how much bigger this game would be than Outer Worlds, because I don't think Outer Worlds was really all that big. Like maybe like 20, 25 hours per se. Like it wasn't as big as something like Fallout or Skyrim. I think that was really what they also tried to like set their expectations. So I don't know if this is going to be something along those lines or something even larger than that. I'm not sure, but I would say Avowed is probably one of the higher big announcements in this presentation. So with that, we're about halfway through. Next game coming up is a game from Interior Night, which it seemed to be some people from old Quantic Dream forming this new studio. It's a game called As Dusk Falls, and it has this really cool style where they have like still characters but then like moving backgrounds, where so like the backgrounds are moving like in real time but the characters are still, which I think I'm interested. I'm not I didn't love what I saw, I suppose. I don't see that and be like, wow, that looks incredible. It's kind of like something I would say some of like the indie stuff that was at the PlayStation one. Like I thought Little Devil Inside, like something like that. Like I thought that looked cool. I'd be interested in playing that, but I don't really feel like, wow, I really want to play this. And even as a fan of like very heavy narrative story-driven games, it didn't really move me all that much that I really needed to play this game. But again, I'm still interested. I'm interested to see more. I'm interested to see what the game is, per se. And I feel like, you can say that a lot about these games on this list. I mean, Tell Me Why, Everwild. State of Decay, we can kind of assume what that's going to be like. Avowed, I mean, that's really too early to tell. But As Dusk Falls really would have been a game that really would have helped if there was like a UI or something. Like, how does this game play? Are you just making dialogue choices? Are you actually moving around? Is it like a point and click adventure kind of thing? Maybe there's some other details out there, but I didn't really see anything currently out there for this. But next up, probably my biggest disappointment in the entire show. So Game Awards 2019, we got the announcement that, hey, guess what? Xbox Series X is a thing. That's what Scarlet is. And we got the announcement of Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, I believe, is the name. And we really got absolutely nothing other than the game is set in Iceland. And they basically said for other stuff about Iceland, check out the Ninja Theory YouTube channel, which then I did. And it's only like a 3-minute dev diary about here's what some of the locations look like in Iceland that we took inspiration from. And I just was really disappointed. I would have thought that would have been the other big kind of, I guess they'll use the word tentpole game that we would get gameplay for would be Hellblade 2. And I don't even know if we're getting that at all. Maybe there's something in August or September that we'll see something more. But I would say if this was supposed to be Microsoft's big blowout, and really the only gameplay we actually got to saw was probably Halo Infinite and maybe the Gunk. Maybe maybe a little bit of Crossfire X. I just feel like it was really disappointing for me. And as somebody who really, really enjoyed the first Hellblade, I just didn't care that that's what they brought to this. But yeah, I mean that's really all there is to say about Hellblade. Next up, it went right into kind of weird stuff, which I had no idea, but then they showed the Double Fine logo, and it's Psychonauts 2. Which, this is another game that I would throw into the Outer Worlds thing, where, hey, Psychonauts 2 is a multi-platform game, but Double Fine is now a first-party Xbox studio, so we kind of have to show this off. I would say, if Double Fine was just being Double Fine independent, same thing with Outer Worlds, like they're probably not showing DLC for Outer Worlds, and they're probably not showing a new trailer for Psychonauts 2 at this event. Maybe they do, but I'm not sure. I would say probably not. Jack Black, I guess, is doing one of the theme songs. I think it looks really cool. I never played the original, but I almost ended up playing In the Rhombus of Ruin, which is the VR game, which I guess is kind of a bridge between Psychonauts 1 and 2. I almost did play that on PSVR, but never did. But I mean, I love 3D platformers, so I think I'd probably enjoy something like Psychonauts, but never did end up playing that. I do believe it is PS4 or PS2 on PS4 kind of thing. So I think you can probably download it if you have PS4. But I think it looks good. I love the color. Those kinds of things. Xbox Series X, PC, and Xbox One, which I would assume being on Xbox One as well. Next up, we got some talk about Destiny 2 Beyond Light, which, other than a newish trailer and I guess the Game Pass announcement that all expansions are coming to Xbox Game Pass in September, and then when Beyond Light launches in November, it will also be a part of Xbox Game Pass. I do think that is actually pretty big news. We already knew there was an existence of an Xbox Series X version. They announced that, I think, at wherever Bungie's own event back then, like probably a couple months ago now at this point, it seems like. But yeah, it was really weird to also see some gameplay, like 60 frames per second gameplay of Destiny 2 on a console that wasn't necessarily on PC. And yeah, you stack that up to like the actual Bungie creators versus something like Halo Infinite from 343, and it really did kind of look like Destiny 2 looked better than Halo Infinite. Um, I mean, Bungie's a pretty high pedigree studio, so maybe that's easy for them. But really, just the big announcement. It's coming to Game Pass, all the expansions, all that stuff. Next up is maybe an announcement that a lot of people didn't expect, and I didn't either. It's a game that I called probably 2 seconds within the logo popping up, and it's going to be Stalker 2. It had very Metro kind of vibes, and because it had that kind of Chernobyl kind of look to it, and I wasn't really sure, like, oh, is this already a new Metro game? And then the only really thing I could think about would be Stalker. And this is kind of the beginning of their console launch exclusive block, I guess, let's say. And this is going to be Xbox Series X, PC. I don't really know who's developing it. I want to say maybe they showed a logo of a developer, but I didn't dig too much into seeing Stalker 2. I'm sure it's out there who's developing it. I'd be kind of surprised if it was 4A Games, the Metro series developers, who part of them went and were working on Stalker before Metro 2033. But we did have the Stalker, and then right after that, we seemed to have a game that looked just like it a little bit. People walking in dark environments. This is Warhammer 40k Darktide, which I guess if you want to say Warhammer Vermintide was Left 4 Dead in the like fantasy Warhammer universe, Warhammer 40k Darktide is basically Vermintide in the future. So it seems to be more like, you know, that Left 4 Dead style game, but now you actually have guns and all the other gadgets you get. Maybe you're just fighting aliens and stuff. I don't really know anything about Warhammer. But that's also console launch exclusive, 4-player co-op, Xbox Series X, PC, coming out in 2021. Next up, that Enhance Games like logo popped up, and I got really excited. I was like, oh boy, here we go. And you start hearing the song from the connected song from Tetris Effect, and I got pretty excited. And I saw like Tetsuya Mizuguchi on there. I was like, all right, we're going good. And then you do find out that it is a new Tetris Effect kind of expansion. And one of the big kind of complaints with the original Tetris Effect on PS4 and then later on PC is that it did not have any multiplayer. So this game is coming out holiday 2020, and it has an optimized single player and an all new multiplayer. And it looks like probably some remixes maybe in there as well. I think that'd be fantastic. But it is 2020 for holiday 2020 for Xbox, and then it's a free update for summer 2021 on other platforms. So probably have to wait, you know, that 6-7 months to play it on PlayStation or Oculus or PC kind of platforms. But I'm excited. I really enjoy Tetris Effect. There's really not that many games once I beat and finish and feel like I've had my time with it, I actually go back and play. But Tetris Effect really is that kind of comfort food for me, especially in VR. You just, you know, like, you know what, I'm just going to pop in Tetris Effect, put the headset on, put some headphones on, and you really do just kind of get absorbed. And the great thing, not to go on too much about Tetris Effect, but what that game does so well is it just puts things into perspective. And I think it really just kind of shows the beauty of the world in its game and just the music at the same time, which is really what I absolutely love about video games. And yes, it's Tetris, but I do feel like every time you can turn and drop a block, you know, all these different sound effects, you're kind of like almost making the music, you're altering the world, all of that stuff at the same time. It's an incredible game. So really excited that it's coming to Xbox, and excited that there's new content coming, even though I'll have to wait a little bit longer than on the platform that I would prefer, but it's still cool that it's coming. Next up is another console launch exclusive. I wrote in my notes here, probably the worst name of the show. This is from the SteamWorld devs, Image and Form Games. So was it SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2? They made SteamWorld Heist. I want to say there's another SteamWorld game out there, but I don't remember. I might be just confused. It might be another game I'm confusing, but maybe it's like Shovel Knight Dig I'm getting confused about. I'm not sure. But this is another game we actually seemed like we saw actual gameplay for. So this is coming out September 2021, which I felt like was very specific. Usually when a game's like over a year out, they're like, oh, okay, just 2021 or late 2021 or fall 2021. But they were very specific about the September part. So that makes me feel like they probably have a specific date set internally, but in September, but weren't willing to share it at this time. This is PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X, of course, but interesting that it is Xbox One as well. It just seemed like you're running around vacuuming up this like gooey substance, and I don't know if you're like Super Mario Sunshine, like cleaning it up and getting rid of it, or you're using these materials or this gunk to create new things. I wasn't really entirely clear on that, but one thing I was clear about was the name. It was just, you gotta think of something better than the gunk. Like, oh yeah, man, we're gonna play the gunk on Xbox One or Xbox Series X. Like, I'm really excited for the gunk. I don't know. I just feel like there was something better you could have said other than that. Getting towards the home stretch here. A game we saw at the third-party showcase for Xbox Series X. This is the Medium, which I was watching a lot of like reactions, like people watching alongside the event, which I always love to just watch the event like raw, basically. Like I want to watch the actual feed of Xbox or PlayStation or Ubisoft. I don't really like watching people talk over them unless it's, you know, obviously after. Like I've already seen it and then listening to people talk about it, I think it's interesting. But it just seemed like a lot of people that I watched after the fact didn't know what this game was, and we just saw it like 3-4, maybe 2 months ago, whenever it was. It just seemed like very like, yeah, this is that game, the Medium. Like, and they were just like, have we seen this before? Like, I don't think we've ever seen this before. That's just a little side note. It's really neat that they talk about exploring two realities at the same time, and that they're rendered at the same time. And also noting that it is console launch exclusive for Xbox, which I assumed. This is from Bloober Team. It has Akira Yamaoka from Silent Hill fame doing, I think, part of the music. I don't think he's doing all of the music. But that's just really interesting. I think the coolest part with the two realities at the same time is probably the coolest thing, whereas the best way I could describe it is I want to say like stuff like Halo 1 and 2 anniversary, like, you know, you hit like the back button or whatever and it switches between the old game and the new game, like the new graphics and the old graphics. I feel like that's like the best way I can describe it, because they're kind of rendering the game twice at the same time. You're just seeing one or the other. And I think they did announce that this game is going to be 30 frames per second, which I guess had some people maybe upset, which is the internet. When are they not going to be upset? But especially when you're rendering those two worlds, kind of like that normal world and Silent Hill other world kind of thing. You know, it's really hard to do, especially even on new hardware. So 30 frames per second sounds fine to me. But pretty excited about that. I think that is certainly one of the highlights of this show. Next up, a lot of people got excited for this, and I even was like, whoa, even too. Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. So this Phantasy Star Online 2, we saw some talk about it last year at E3. It was like a really big announcement that Xbox got, that Phantasy Star is coming to the West. And they kept talking about like a new chapter. And I guess maybe that sounds right, but like, or I can't remember what wording they used, but it almost seemed like it was a brand new game. Like it almost seemed like it was Phantasy Star Online 3. I think I watched like Maximilian Dude's video on it, and he was like, oh my gosh, is this like Phantasy Star Online 3? But no, it's just an expansion. I feel like it might be out already on the other platforms, like PC, not PC, but like the Japanese platforms. It did have a list of 2021, but it also did say like your adventure or true adventure starts now or something like that. I was like, oh, does that mean like it's available now? Not sure, but it's Xbox One, PC, Xbox Series X, 2021. I think that game looks great. I think Phantasy Star Online looks really cool. I just wish I had time to play them. Next up, the kind of penultimate announcement is Crossfire X, which is another game we heard about last year at E3, console launch exclusive. And we'd heard about this before, that the campaign is going to be built by Remedy, the developers of things like Control and Quantum Break, Alan Wake, that kind of stuff. Crossfire X is this big kind of like, I guess, multiplayer shooter in other parts of the world, but they have Smilegate, Smile Bright, something like that. They have tasked Remedy, which I think is a great pick to do a single player campaign, which I think you've definitely got to get a lot of money behind that to be able to give something like that. Like, I feel like they really could have just thrown the minimum amount of money at some developer and they could have thrown something out, but I feel like they really put a lot of money to get Remedy, and then I feel like Remedy must have been really excited to actually feel like they could create something really cool. I'm actually kind of excited. Comes out 2020. I'll be surprised if this campaign hits then. Just to list Xbox Series X, Xbox One. They do also make the little mention that if you're playing on, you do have to pay for the single player campaign. So this is kind of a game that doesn't really include any of the Game Pass stuff, because the I guess multiplayer is going to be free to play, but then the single player is like a separate purchase, which is not included with Game Pass. So I'd be interested to see how much they put that campaign at. If I had to guess, I would guess somewhere like $30. It just depends on how fleshed out this campaign by Remedy is. I mean, if it is a Call of Duty style, maybe like, 6 to 8 hour campaign, I feel like, yeah, I would say $30 would be worth it. Next up, right before the big final announcement, we do have some miscellaneous stuff. They talked about everything you've seen here today will be on Xbox Game Pass, which I think is the biggest announcement. Other than Halo and whatnot, and even bigger than Avowed, I think the Xbox Game Pass is the stuff that is going to sell people. And I feel like it doesn't really seem like it's going to happen 100% now, but like if games are going to raise in price and if Game Pass can stay the same price, that's huge. That like all of this stuff, minus the Crossfire X single player and minus the Outer Worlds DLC, everything on here is going to be on Xbox Game Pass, which is really phenomenal. The only thing I would say is that it's kind of hard to push Game Pass when sometimes there's not a ton on there I want to play. And I'm running into that a little bit with like PlayStation Now. Like I've played stuff like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, because also Rise of the Tomb Raider was on Plus, so played that. Fantastic. I don't know, fantastic, but like it's just fantastic. I was able to play that. The game was fine. Control I played, really enjoyed that. Started also like Watch Dogs 2. Like all these games are on PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Now. But there's also a lot of stuff on PlayStation Now that I look at and I'm like, why do I want to play this, or am I just feeling like I have to play this because I paid for this subscription? Like there really is a lot of stuff I'm not all that excited about on PS Now. And I feel like with the same thing with this, like I feel like there's going to be plenty of games that I'm like, I don't really care. Like State of Decay 3 is going to be on Game Pass, but I'm like, am I really going to go play State of Decay 3? Like I don't really think so. I don't really care. Like maybe, not to throw another game under the bus, but like something like Warhammer 40k Dark Tide. Like I'm not a multiplayer person. I'm probably not going to go play that game. So I mean, it is great that you're getting this value, but it is also kind of weird that like, yeah, but you also have to give me really great games to be excited about, which I don't know if this did. I feel like it's kind of for specific people, I would say. Other than that, just mentioning, again, Forza Horizon 4, Gears 5, Tactics, Sea of Thieves, or Xbox Series X optimized. They're talking about, as well as, they talked about Ori as well earlier. There are more games from studios to share later this year. So stuff like Mojang we didn't hear about, which I don't expect them to do anything crazy. Stuff like the Initiative we had not heard about lately. There's even the last announcement being Playground Games. We got to hear about them, which I'll get to in a sec. But trying to think of some other studios that, of course, I'm absolutely going blank on. We heard from Double Fine, heard from Rare, heard from Turn 10, Undead Labs, 343, Coalition, probably working on the next Gears, but probably that's very early development and probably just working on supporting Gears 5 still. Stuff like that. Double Fine, we've already seen, still working on Psychonauts 2. I'm basically going to say we didn't hear anything from Ninja Theory. That was really just nothing to me. Like you could have told me what Hellblade 2 was in a tweet. You could have told me everything, but you could have even embedded that 3-minute video in a tweet, and that could have been your announcement. But that was all they said. But going over the last announcement, this is the game that so I ended up having to watch this conference after the fact, and when I pulled up the video, this actually got spoiled for me a little bit. So I did see that at some point in this presentation a new Fable game was going to be announced, and I did not know that it was going to be the last announcement, but pretty much when they said we have one more thing, I already knew what it was. But this is the heavily rumored game from Playground Games, which I'm not a Fable person, but I think that's so cool that a developer that really all they've made is Forza Horizon games, and maybe they made something before that, that they're actually going out and making something completely different. Like, you know, you could say that how is a studio that only makes racing games is going to make a Fable game? But I would say, you know, probably the best of the Forza games are the Horizon games to some people. And yeah, they're making something completely different, but there is also something to be said about a developer that consistently puts out good, high-quality games. So if you can consistently put out high-quality games, I would love for you to jump into a new genre. I mean, you could say the same thing about Guerrilla. I feel like that's the biggest one that I feel like I hear about is you had a developer that was only making linear first-person shooters, and then you asked them to go make an open world action RPG, which I think is so cool. So I think the only thing really heard about it was on the blog post. They said a new beginning for the legendary franchise. So it does seem like this game might just be called Fable. It is just going to be like a reboot. I doubt it's going to be Fable : a new beginning. Maybe it is. I have no idea. But they only listed this as Xbox Series X and PC. The only thing we got to see was just a fairy flying around, or like Tinkerbell flying around, and then a frog ate her, and then they scrolled up and they said, "Here's Fable." That's it. So, and of the things to like get upset about, like oh, people say like, oh, there was no gameplay, but I mean, I would say Avowed and Fable are the two that are like, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with not seeing gameplay. Like these games are super early. So I'm perfectly fine that I didn't get to see a Fable gameplay demo at this. I'm perfectly fine with that. But that's the lineup. That was really the end of the show. I think it was just, the 4K 60 upload was 57 minutes, 27 seconds. So again, just under an hour. I would say, I'm trying to say this without feeling too fanboyish, I guess, on the Sony side. But I would say if you're PlayStation, you're in a pretty good spot right now. I think really right now this is Sony's game to lose. I think right now talking about just the difference in philosophy between Xbox being like, okay, we're easing you into this next generation. You don't have to buy an Xbox Series X at launch, but of course, if you want like the best version of this game or whatnot, you're gonna play it on Xbox Series X. But like really the fact that them having this messaging like you don't have to buy one at launch, like you're gonna get your smart delivery, it's also gonna be on PC, all that stuff. Game Pass is still all gonna be there. I think it's interesting, and I think it is consumer friendly, but I do think right now Sony's play of, hey, here's Spider-Man Miles Morales, but it's only on PlayStation 5. Here's Ratchet and Clank, but it's only on PlayStation 5. These are games that I would have expected to also be on PS4 and PS5, specifically because of how huge of an install base PS4 is. That was my expectation, but it really does seem like that. No, they do believe in a console generation, so I do think some things early on are going to look and feel more impressive on PlayStation 5 than they are on Xbox Series X, but I guess that remains to be seen. The one part I would say that, I guess I'll say this, I do feel like right now it's Sony's race to lose if we're talking about, the console generations, all that kind of stuff. It really is Sony's game to lose. Whereas I feel like we know so much about also the Xbox Series X being like backwards compatibility and services and things like that. I feel like there's so much we don't know about the PlayStation 5 yet. We heard like, oh, there is going to be like the backwards compatibility, but that was kind of like weird messaging, I felt like still. How's PlayStation Plus going to work? How's game upgrades going to work? Like you talked about, GTA 5 is going to be on PS5, but do I have to rebuy GTA 5 for PS5? Do I get like if there's going to be a PS5 version of The Last of Us 2, am I going to get that automatically, or am I going to have to pay for that again? Am I able to put a disc in, my PS4 disc in, and play it, or does it have to be like a digital thing? Like, it's just some of these things that like I'm waiting for the Vita memory card shoe to drop. Whereas like Vita's released, it was like really great, getting close to launch, and it's like, oh, by the way, 32 gigabyte Vita cartridges are like $100, and it's like, what? And there is like the whole thing about like, oh, you can't get trophies on a used copy of the game, and you're like, excuse me. And oh yeah, we have AT&T 3G exclusively. Like, what? It's just stuff like that I just am waiting for, because Sony knows how to screw things up, and I'm just really waiting for that screw up moment from Sony, because I do feel like that PS5 reveal was a really good first step, but I also feel like there's so much that we're just waiting for the shoe to drop on this. And I do feel like it's going to be a mess, because I don't think they're going to talk about all this stuff in the next state of play or whatnot. I feel like a lot of this is going to come out either on like a PlayStation blog post, or it's going to be like Jim Ryan. I feel like I can see it now. Like Jim Ryan's going to say something, and then another Sony executive is going to say something else, and then they're going to contradict each other. But then one of them is going to end up being true, but then kind of not as true. I mean, I just feel like that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen with this. Where I think in that moment, I feel like Xbox has been in a good position, but I do feel like the messaging between what games are on Xbox One, what games are only on Series X, I feel like that's really been a kind of a misstep for them. In addition to just being Halo Infinite just kind of looking like a dud right now. I'm still excited. If I had a PC that could play it, I would definitely play it. But I don't at this time. Maybe in the future, but I mean, that's a game that I will be very interested in. I still have my 360 actually hooked up, and I actually put in Halo 4 and started playing that a little bit, just to get a little bit of a Halo fix. My favorite probably Halo is Halo Reach, so anything that gets closer to that is probably cool. But yeah, I mean, to give a top three, top three, number one, I would give, for excitement hype levels, I would give the Tetris Effect Connected. That would be my number one, which is really weird to say, but looking back, that was probably the most excited I got during the entire event, was a new Tetris Effect content coming. That has me pretty excited. Number two, I think I still might go with Halo Infinite. I still might. It didn't look great. I want to see what multiplayer looks like. I want to see if there's another like third pillar, but I would still say I'm still excited for it. So I would say Halo Infinite is going to be my number two. And my number 3, as a fan who loves Life is Strange, I would probably go with Tell Me Why. I really would have loved for a Hellblade 2 to have like been my number 1 or number 2. But I do think that's certainly going to have to be left out as of... I think out of everything shown on this entire list, you could have taken out any mention of Hellblade 2. And in a weird way, it might have been a better show because you didn't get the disappointment that Hellblade 2 brought. So, yeah, again, I'll probably just say that number 1, Tetris Effect Connected. Number 2, Halo Infinite. Number 3, Tell Me Why. But we're going to get more news coming soon. I mean, I think this is a really exciting time. And I know it's... And one thing I didn't touch on was, I would have loved for things to look better. I would have loved for more gameplay demos. We are still in the middle of a pandemic. So many people are still working from home. It's really hard to get these things together to provide like a showcase for somebody. And I do think that is something that has to be said about this, which, as it has just made development even harder, especially up to the finish line, where a lot of these games are right now. I mean, even Aaron Greenberg had an interview saying that, we're months away, I want to say, or we're a long ways away or something from launch. I'm like, this thing's coming out something like November, you're 4 months away, which really is not a long ways away. And when I think about Halo Infinite, again, this game I feel like should have been complete 6 months ago. You should be really, not to use that, whatever that dumb commercial was about, like, you should really be tightening up the graphics on level 3 kind of thing. Like, you really should be doing a lot of bug fixing, I feel like presentation stuff. I feel like a lot of it doesn't look complete and it does look incomplete. So, I mean, again, there is time for things to change, that's for sure. And again, if this is an old demo, which I feel like is just kind of like an easy app, like, that demo was old and, it was on PC or something like that, which they've kind of talked about. I don't know. It's still time, but time is quickly fading, that's for sure. But yeah, that's been this post-game show on the Xbox Games Showcase. Let me know what you thought. Just kind of thought I'd stick my face in front of a microphone, tell you what I thought. I do like a lot of this, a lot of his new stuff for video games. I think Ubisoft Forward was pretty disappointing. Far Cry 6 looks cool. Apparently there's another Ubisoft Forward coming at some point. Hopefully we get maybe more news in August for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I don't know if both are going to have an event, but we're getting pretty close. That gonna have to start throwing some prices out there. Gonna have to start throwing some pre-orders out there. Gonna have to start throwing some release dates out there. But hopefully that should be coming soon. Maybe within the next month or so. We'll have to see.